people are designed to live on starch. And of course, that's something that really confuses a lot of folks. They think, typical person thinks that we're on a meat or dairy-centered diet. And of course, that's absolutely silly. And as people become more sophisticated, they say, well, we should be on a plant food-based diet. But that's not specific enough. The human being is designed as a starch eater. And that's the proper term, starch. And that's what people have to be focused on. Traditionally, think about it. People have lived on rice, like the Asians, or sweet potatoes like the people from New Guinea, or plain potatoes like the people in the Andes, Peru and Chile, corn for the Indians. It's been a starch-based diet. You need those calories. You have to have those high-calorie starches as the center of your meal plan. And then you add fruits and vegetables. In addition, people are tough. They can tolerate some rich foods, some delicacies. And so if folks want to have delicacies like eggs on Easter or turkey on Thanksgiving or candy on their birthday or Valentine's Day, I mean, the human body tolerates that, but that's not what supports good health. Well, my understanding of what people should eat is based on my early experiences as a doctor. I was a plantation doctor on the big island of Hawaii. I took care of people who worked on a sugar plantation. And these people had their origins in countries like Japan or the Philippines or China. And they learned a diet of rice and vegetables, and they brought it with them to Hawaii, and they continued the diet. And these were the first generation people. And they had kids, and they learned a little bit more about the American diet, and grandkids were fully Americanized in their eating. So I had a chance to observe these three generations of people. The first generation, living on rice primarily and vegetables, very little meat, no dairy, were always trim. They had no breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, no diabetes, no heart disease, active into their 80s and 90s. Their kids, who gave up some of this starch and vegetable eating, went into more of the animal products, more of the rich foods. They got a little fatter, a little sicker, and the grandkids were just as fat and just as sick as anybody that I had ever taken care of. So that was my introduction. That taught me that what I'd originally learned as an unhealthy diet, a diet without meat and dairy, was not true, because my healthiest people did not eat diets centered on meat and dairy. They ate diets centered on starch. And it also taught me that it wasn't inevitable that as you get older, you get fatter and sicker, because these people didn't. They maintained their good health and their activity into old age. It was because of their diet. I was raised in the Midwest, and the kind of diet that I ate was the typical American diet, maybe even a little worse than most people. My parents could afford to serve us all the eggs we wanted, all the white bread, all the steaks. I could drink a gallon of milk a day if I wanted, and I did. And we had, plenty of candy, a lot of junk around the house, and that was basically our diet because my parents didn't know any different. And so that's how I was raised. And of course, it was a difficult childhood. I suffered significantly because of that food. As a little kid, I was terribly constipated, had terrible stomach trouble. I lost my tonsils at age 7 because of all the dairy that I used to eat. In my teenage years, I had acne, pretty bad acne. I was quite lethargic, didn't have endurance, so didn't do well in sports. At 18, I went off to college, and I continued all that rich eating at the dormitory, and I ended up with a major stroke, paralyzed the entire left side of my body, and it's still weak today, 40 years later. As a young adult, when I was, say, 22 years old, I was so fat, my mother called me fat. And at 25, I had major abdominal surgery because my stomach hurt so much and so often. Fortunately, about age 26, 27, I started changing my diet. And now today at 60, I'm healthier than I was at 18 or 22. Yeah, I think Americans really haven't been challenged to think about what they eat. I don't even think they even think about it. They've been taught a well-balanced diet. They hear all the commercials on TV advertising the meat and the dairy and the rich food. And the message is so well financed that it's rare that somebody has correct information. As a consequence, most people don't stand a chance. Even if they want it to be healthy, they don't stand a chance. Now, for those people who want to be healthy and are willing to make the change because the information that is counterproductive to good health is so prevalent, they don't stand a chance. And I think the only help is for those few people who do care, who just say to themselves, hey, I got a great life, I got a great family, I got a great job, I've got this fat belly and I'm sick. I want it fixed. Those people, you give them the information, they'll go for it. But I think the bulk of the population really doesn't feel motivated enough. They're not sick enough to make necessary changes, even though I would think they're sick enough. They don't think they're sick enough. And I think also the bulk of the population really doesn't think they have any real control over their future. They don't think food's important. They don't realize the profound impact that a dietary change will always have on them. And if they realize that, it would make a huge difference. But nobody's telling them. Industry's not telling them. Their doctors aren't telling them. The dietitians aren't telling them. Nobody's telling them. Well, people are fat because they eat like kings and queens. They eat like aristocrats of old. I mean, look at the art and the written history of the past, and what you see is obese people with gout in their feet. When you eat a diet that is full of rich foods, what happens is the body adapts to those rich foods, and part of the adaptation is it puts on a tremendous amount of body fat, and it gets sick. It gets terribly burdened. So it's just as simple as this, and this is one of the most important concepts for people to get. It's the composition of the diet. The most important thing that I teach people is their health and personal appearance depends upon the composition of the foods that are on their plate. If you have a diet like I had when I was a kid that was composed of lots of fats and sugars and refined foods and meats and dairy products and all kinds of junk, and that's what's going into the body, then you take on a certain characteristic appearance and health, bad health actually. It's because of the composition of the food. It doesn't matter to me whether you think good thoughts or bad thoughts, whether you're a nice person or a bad person, whether you go to church or not. It has to do with the kind of food that you put in your mouth. So if you're going to eat rich foods, you look like people who eat rich foods. Think about the fat kings and queens of old. If you're going to eat a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables and minimize the dairy and the meat, then you're going to look like people who eat that kind of diet. And there are billions of people that provide that example. I mean, you think about the people who live in Japan or Thailand or Cambodia or in Peru or in New Guinea. People who live on starch-based diets are always trim, young, active, and avoid the diseases that we have. It's the composition of the food. That's all you have to care about. The statistics are that 2/3 of people are overweight in Western countries, and maybe 1/3 are obese. And it's due to what they eat. It's really not due to lack of physical activity. I think that's secondary. Secondary in the fact that they don't feel well enough to exercise, and secondary in terms of its impact on health and personal appearance. We got to get the food right first. But I really don't think people will choose that on their own. I mean, they like rich foods. They like the fact that they can eat like the richest people that ever lived on this planet. They're really comfortable with these kinds of foods. So except for a small percentage of the population who really do care about their health and personal appearance, the bulk of the population is not going to change on their own. So they're going to have to be forced to change, and this may occur due to changes in our economics. If we developed a worldwide depression, and that's all that was available was rice and potatoes and sweet potatoes and fruits and vegetables, the health in the world would change overnight, basically. Or if we had some forced rules that made people change. Like, for example, if insurance companies, like they do with smokers and alcoholics and drunk drivers, they say, hey, we're not going to insure you, or we're going to charge you a huge premium for your abusive behavior. Now, if that happened, and insurance companies made those kinds of rules, then people would pay attention to change. It's money out of their pockets if they end up doing the wrong things. So insurance company says, okay, if you eat this rich Western diet and we can see it in your cholesterol and your blood pressure and your body weight, then you're going to be charged 3 times as much as somebody who doesn't. People will change. Or, it's possible that the government could decide that we need to make a big change in our country, in our population. I think that that's not unrealistic. If things got more desperate in this country, I think that there would be some government rules to change. I mean, after all, we live in a population of people that is so fat and so sick that we couldn't defend ourselves from an invading nation. It's unbelievable, the condition that we're in. We're basically defenseless because of our current health crisis. The human being is designed to live on starch with the addition of fruits and vegetables. And animal products do not add to better nutrition. I mean, that's basically the way to look at it. When I started putting together the McDougall diet, as a lot of people refer to it, about 30 years ago, I started with the premise, what would be the best diet for people to eat to be in good health and to look their best? And I came up with a starch-based diet, rice, corn, potatoes, beans, a starch-based diet with fruits and vegetables. And then what I would do is I'd play these mental games. I'd say, well, what if I added dairy? Would that make an overall positive or negative impact? And the answer was it made a negative impact. Well, what if I added chicken or fish or beef? And it all came down to, well, I'd be adding things like calories and maybe some vitamins and minerals that may be in larger amounts. But the harm that I added by making that addition to the starch-based diet far outweighed any benefits. So the simple answer is that people not only do not need animal products to be healthy, if they consume them in significant amounts, they'll be sick, just like Westerners are. They're sick and fat. People are always telling me that they're going to be saved by their heredity, their good genetics. And they point out that Grandma and Grandpa, they live to be 85, 95 years old, eating bacon grease on their bread. And, that may be in part true. I mean, genetics are an important issue, but Grandma and Grandpa didn't live the same way that we do. I mean, pesticides and all these environmental chemicals only became an issue after World War II. And they ate out of their garden, and they worked hard all day long, and they spent time out in the sunshine, which is very important for good health. So it really isn't the same. And people, when they really look at the overall picture, they're not being saved by their genetics. And so I certainly wouldn't count on that. The issue of whether or not we should eat animals takes us along many different paths. The path I took was one as a doctor. I mean, I was interested in people's health. And what I saw is that people who relied upon animal flesh or animal byproducts like eggs and dairy products, they got fat and sick. And some of the reasons are identified easily by terms such as cholesterol and fat and lack of fiber and so on. But it's basically the wrong food for people is to eat animals. Now that's the original road that I took, but there are other issues too that have become even important to me, in fact, very important to me. There are issues such as the environment. And we're basically eating the earth to death by consuming all of this livestock, and this has got to change. And so I speak out vocally these days about the fact that you have to change your diet not only to save human health, but you have to change your diet to save the environment, and it's got to be done quickly. And then there's the issue of animal rights, which I can also sympathize with and give some very important credence to. So, yeah, it's wrong to eat animals, no matter how you look at it. I'm going to still emphasize the health issues and hope that inspires people. But to tell you the truth, I really think the change is going to come because people realize how much destruction they're doing to the planet by their behaviors. The U.S. healthcare system is a system based on profit. I mean, it's just out there to share a lot of money is basically what it is. If its intention was to really make people healthy, then it would be a very unprofitable system. As it is now, you got the commodity, which is sick, fat people, which everybody's getting fat off of, so to speak, economically. The doctors are getting rich, the drug companies are getting rich, the hospitals are getting rich, the insurance companies are getting rich off of all this sickness. After all, the bigger the business, the more money these insurance companies make. And so all the financial incentive is towards sickness. Now, we could change all that, and that would take some really strong manipulation of the rules. We could punish insurance companies and doctors for sickness. We could make it such a system where a doctor would be paid upon the patients being healthier. We almost had that. It was called capitation. It went by its way about 10 years ago, but under the capitated system, the doctor got a certain amount of money to spend on the patients. And what was left over, the doctor got to keep it. And so it was really to the doctor's advantage to keep the patients healthy. It never got around to that, but it could and it should. So if you change the financial incentives in our healthcare system so that good health, good function, and a good diet were the rewards, then we'd see a change in our health overnight. I have to say that what I've learned What I've developed, what I present is not original in any way. I mean, I stand on the shoulders of many great people. And they go back as far as Daniel in the Bible, who practiced the McDougall 10-day program and reported it 2005 or 3,500 years ago. There are some more recent people that have made a great influence on me, like Russell Henry Chittenden, who was the head of Yale's Department of Biochemistry for 30 years. He knew basically everything that I knew, that I know now, over 100 years ago. And there was Walter Kempner, who went to Duke University and taught the rice diet. He essentially published everything I talk about by 1953. Nathan Pritikin made it very popular, a near-vegetarian starch-based diet. Roy Swank, who was the head of neurology for 23 years at the University of Oregon Medical School, basically cured multiple sclerosis with the kind of diet that I teach. So there are many folks whose shoulders I stand on and who I rely upon to tell this message. And I love to tell their stories. Sometimes I get asked about what I've made as far as a contribution to what goes on here in terms of good health and knowledge about diet and medicine. And I have to say I've made very little original contribution, but I'll tell you what I did bring to the table that nobody else has done, and that's Mary. You know, Mary, my wife, my partner for 35 years, is an absolute genius in the kitchen. She's a very humble person. She would never express this to you. But what she's done is taking something that in most people's minds is impractical and made it not only practical but enjoyable. In fact, the best meal plan that there is. None of my heroes, none of my mentors had a Mary. You know, Walter Kempner didn't even have a wife. I don't know who Russell Henry Chittenden lived with, and I knew Roy Swank's at least two of his wives, and none of them brought the contribution to their practice that Mary has brought to mine. So I'd have to say when it goes down in history as far as where the difference in the McDougall diet lies, it's in the fact that I was very fortunate to end up with the right partner in life. You know, I've been at this now for almost 35 years. And when I originally discovered the things that I discovered 35 years ago, I went to my chief of medicine. I was a resident in internal medicine. And I said that 80% of the problems that I treat are caused by diet, and most of them would be cured if we changed people's diet. And of course, he got upset with me. I thought it would be just a matter of months, if not years, that everybody else would discover this and the whole world would change. That was 35 years ago. I don't see things as any better. For the bulk of the population, what I see is there are a certain group of people who have taken advantage of this information and made changes. It's just like with cigarette smoking. Intelligent people who have high levels of self-worth don't smoke. Who smokes are teenage girls and blue-collar workers. You know, it's the same thing with other abuses that people do in life, is that those who really get a bang on life, who really enjoy life, who want the most out of it, they pick up this good information about habits and diet, and they put it in their life, and it changes everything. So, you know, my realistic belief is that we're only going to get to a small segment of the population. And it is important that we get to these people. You know, I consider myself one of these people, and I think our audience is that kind of person. You want to have a better life, and so you want this information. But I really don't plan on all of the public understanding what to do and making changes. Just like, look at how many people smoke these days and abuse alcohol and don't wear their safety belts. There's always going to be the bulk of the people who just don't get it or don't care. I think the most important thing for people to understand is they have an opportunity, once they have information, they have an opportunity to have a much, much better life. And I think what you should do is you should worry about yourself and your family and your immediate friends. And you share this message with everybody that you can share it with that you care about. And I think if each and every one of us did that, instead of worrying about the whole world, we just worried about those people we love around us and really made the effort to communicate and to help them change, that there are enough people that will learn this message that will change the whole world.